Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the research vessel New Horizons, staring at the massive shape floating in the darkness of space. The alien ship was huge, easily 3 times the size of his own vessel. Its black metal hull was covered in strange markings that seemed to shift and move in the starlight. "How long has it been drifting out here?" Jake asked his science officer. Dr. Rebecca Walsh checked her readings again. "Based on the energy signatures, I would say at least 6 months, maybe longer. The ship is completely dead. No power, no life signs, nothing." Jake rubbed his chin thoughtfully. They were at the very edge of known space, farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled before. Finding an alien ship out here was not something they had planned for. "Sir, we should report this to command immediately," said Communications Officer Lisa Chen from her station. "We will," Jake replied. "But first we need to know what we are dealing with. Rebecca, prepare a boarding party. I want to know what happened to that ship." Dr. Walsh nodded and began gathering her equipment. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. As the chief science officer, she had seen many strange things during their deep space mission, but nothing like this. 20 minutes later, Rebecca suited up in the shuttle bay alongside Marine Sergeant Tom Bradley and Engineer Lisa Chen. Tom was a big man with broad shoulders and steady hands. He carried a pulse rifle and enough firepower to handle most threats. Lisa was smaller but just as capable, her tools ready to analyze any technology they might find. "Remember, we do not know what killed the crew of that ship," Jake said over the radio. "Stay together, stay alert, and get back here at the first sign of trouble." The shuttle crossed the empty space between the 2 ships quickly. As they got closer, Rebecca could see massive holes torn in the alien vessel's hull. Whatever had attacked it had been powerful and deadly. "Looks like weapons fire," Tom said, examining the damage. "Big weapons. Military grade." They docked with an airlock that was still intact. Lisa worked to bypass the alien security systems while Tom kept watch. The airlock cycled open with a soft hiss, revealing a dark corridor beyond. The interior of the ship was unlike anything Rebecca had ever seen. The walls were made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Strange symbols covered every surface, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. The air was thick and warm, with a metallic smell that made her nose wrinkle. "Artificial. Gravity is still working," Lisa noted, checking her instruments. "Atmosphere is breathable, but I recommend keeping the suits on." They moved deeper into the ship, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The corridors were wide enough for very large beings to walk through comfortably. Rebecca estimated that whatever lived here was much bigger than humans, they found. The first body in what looked like a command center. Rebecca gasped when her light fell across it. The alien was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, even lying on the ground. Its body was covered in dark scales that reflected their lights like armor. 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws were folded across its chest. The head was long and narrow, filled with multiple rows of teeth that gleamed white in the darkness. "What the hell is that thing?" Tom whispered, raising his rifle. "It's dead," Rebecca said, moving closer to examine the body. "Has been for months. Look at the wounds." The alien's chest was torn open by what looked like energy weapons. Purple blood had dried around the massive wounds. Rebecca took readings with her scanner while Tom kept watch. "Definitely not human weapons," she reported. "This was done by alien technology, something with serious firepower." They found 12 more bodies as they explored the ship. All were the same species, all killed by the same type of weapons. The ship itself was clearly military, with weapon systems and armor plating throughout. These beings had been warriors, Rebecca realized. "Dangerous ones." "Captain, we have found something," she reported back to Jake. "The entire crew is dead. They appear to be some kind of predator species, very dangerous looking." "Any threat to us?" Jake asked. "No, sir. They have been dead for months. But, Captain, I think we should explore the lower decks. My readings show some kind of activity down there." Jake was quiet for a moment. What kind of activity? I'm not sure. It's very faint. Could be automated systems or maybe life support for something. Be careful, Rebecca. If there are survivors, they might not be friendly. The team made their way to the lower levels of the ship. The corridors here were different, wider and with softer lighting. Rebecca realized they were in the living quarters of the vessel. The walls were covered with what looked like family pictures, showing the fearsome aliens in groups. Then they heard it. A soft, chittering sound coming from somewhere ahead. Tom raised. His weapon. That does not sound like machinery. They followed the sound down a long corridor until they reached a heavy door marked with symbols that seemed to glow brighter than the others. Lisa worked to open it while the chittering grew louder. The door slid open to reveal a large room filled with soft bedding and what looked like toys. In the center of the room, huddled together under a pile of blankets, were 3 small creatures. Rebecca's heart nearly stopped. They were clearly the offspring of the dead aliens, but tiny. Each one was no bigger than a house cat. Their scales were lighter in color, more gray than black. Their eyes were large and bright, filled with intelligence and fear. The little creatures looked up at the humans and made soft crying sounds. They were shaking with cold and hunger. "Oh my God," Lisa whispered. "They're just babies." One of the cubs, braver than the others, took a small step toward Rebecca. Its big eyes looked up at her hopefully. It made a soft sound that almost sounded like a question. Rebecca looked at her teammates. Tom had lowered his weapon, his face showing surprise and something else. Compassion. "Captain," Rebecca said into her radio, "we have a situation down here. We found survivors. 3 of them." "Are they hostile?" Jake asked quickly. Rebecca looked down at the tiny cubs, who were now all looking at the humans with hope in their eyes. One had started to crawl toward Tom's boots. "No, sir," she said softly. "They are just children. And they need our help." The smallest cub made a weak crying sound and collapsed. Rebecca could see it was starving. All 3 of them were thin and weak. "Captain, we need to bring them back to the ship. They will die if we leave them here." There was a long pause. Rebecca knew Jake was thinking about regulations, about protocols, about all the reasons why bringing unknown aliens aboard was dangerous. "Bring them home, Rebecca," Jake said finally. "We will figure out the rest later." Rebecca smiled and knelt down beside the cubs. The brave one immediately crawled into her arms, its small body warm against her suit. The other 2 followed, making soft, happy sounds. As they prepared to leave the dead ship, Rebecca looked around the nursery one more time. These little ones had lost everything: their parents, their home, their entire world. But maybe, just maybe, they could find something new with the humans. She held the cubs close as they made their way back to the shuttle. Behind them, the ghost ship continued its lonely drift through space. Ahead lay the unknown, and the beginning of something that would change everything. 3 weeks had passed since the New Horizons returned to Luna Station with their unusual passengers. Dr. Rebecca Walsh stood outside the makeshift nursery they had created in the medical bay, watching the 3 alien cubs through the observation window. The cubs had grown stronger since their rescue. Medical officer Dr. David Park had worked day and night to figure out what they needed to survive. The smallest one, which the crew had started calling Swift because of how quickly it moved, was now eating solid food and playing with simple toys. "They are remarkable," said Dr. Andrew Foster, the marine biologist who had joined the team to study the cubs. He was a quiet man with gray hair and kind eyes. "I have never seen anything like their learning ability." Rebecca nodded as she watched Scout, the bravest of the 3, trying to stack colored blocks. The cub had figured out the concept in less than an hour. Its small claws were surprisingly gentle as it carefully placed each block on top of the other. "Captain Morrison wants a full report by tomorrow," Rebecca said. "The diplomatic corps is getting nervous. Ambassador Rodriguez has been fielding calls from the Galactic Council all week." The door to the nursery opened, and Dr. Maria Santos walked out, carrying a tablet full of notes. The linguist looked tired but excited. "Any progress with communication?" Rebecca asked. Maria smiled. "More than I hoped for. Watch this." She activated a recording on her tablet. The sound of her own voice came from the speaker, saying simple human words. Water, food, sleep. Then came the cubs' responses, their chittering, sounds forming surprisingly clear attempts at human speech. Water, food, sleep. Rebecca's eyes widened. They are learning English. Faster than any human child, Maria confirmed. Scout picked up 10 new words just this morning, and they are not just repeating sounds. They understand meaning. When I say food, Scout goes to the feeding area. When I say play, Brave brings me toys. Inside the nursery, the third cub, Brave, was trying to comfort Swift, who had knocked over his block tower. The larger cub made soft sounds and gently touched Swift's head until the smaller one stopped making sad noises. They show clear, emotional intelligence, Dr. Park observed as he joined the group, and pack behavior. But it is different from what we expected based on the adult specimens we found. Rebecca remembered the terrifying corpses on the alien ship. Those creatures had been built for war, with their razor claws and multiple rows of teeth. Looking at the gentle cubs now, it was hard to believe they were the same species. Maybe they change as they grow up, she suggested. Dr. Foster shook his head. I do not think so. I have been studying their brain scans. The aggression centers that should be dominant in a predator species are actually smaller than normal. Instead, the areas associated with social bonding and learning are much larger. A commotion in the corridor interrupted their discussion. Security Chief Colonel Mike Turner was approaching with a stern expression on his face. Behind him walked a woman in the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Dr. Walsh, Colonel Turner said. This is Ambassador Elena Rodriguez. She needs to speak with you about the cubs. Ambassador Rodriguez was a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes. She looked tired and stressed. Dr. Walsh, I need you to understand the situation we are facing. The Galactic Council is demanding that we surrender the cubs immediately. Rebecca felt her stomach tighten. Surrender them to who? The Vethran Empire claims authority over all Corvan affairs since the two species have been at war for centuries. They want the cubs handed over for what they call proper disposal. Disposal, Rebecca repeated, her voice rising. These are children, not weapons. According to the Vethrans, there is no such thing as an innocent Corvan, Ambassador Rodriguez replied. They claim the cubs will grow up to be killing machines no matter how they are raised. Colonel Turner, who had been quiet during the exchange, suddenly spoke up. Ambassador, with respect, I have been observing these cubs for 3 weeks. They show no aggressive behavior toward humans. In fact, they seem to prefer our company to being alone. Ambassador Rodriguez looked surprised. Colonel Turner was known throughout the fleet as a hard man who trusted no one, especially aliens. Hearing him defend the cubs was unexpected. Yesterday, one of my security officers fell and hurt his knee while delivering food, Turner continued. Swift immediately ran to him and made distressed noises until Dr. Park came to help. That does not sound like predator behavior to me. Dr. Park nodded. The cubs have formed emotional attachments to their human caretakers. They show signs of distress when separated from us for too long. Last night, Scout had what appeared to be a nightmare. It was making frightened noises until I sat with it and spoke softly. Then it calmed down and went back to sleep. Ambassador Rodriguez looked through the observation window at the cubs. Scout was now successfully building a tower with his blocks, while Brave and Swift watched and made encouraging sounds. The political pressure is enormous, she said quietly. 3 Galactic Council members have threatened to cut off trade with humanity if we do not comply. Earth's economy cannot survive without interstellar commerce. What does Captain Morrison say? Rebecca asked. He has been promoted to admiral and put in charge of this situation, Rodriguez replied. He refuses to hand over the cubs, but he needs scientific evidence to support his position. Dr. Foster stepped forward. Ambassador, what if we can prove that the cubs are not dangerous? What if we can show that human care has actually made them better than they would have been with their own species? How could we prove something like that? Give us time. Let us study them, teach them, show the galaxy what they can become. If these cubs can learn human values like compassion and cooperation, it changes everything we thought we knew about their species. Ambassador Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, watching as Scout carefully shared his blocks with the other. Cubs. The Galactic Council meets in 6 months, she said finally. That is how long you have. If you cannot prove these cubs are safe by then, I will have no choice but to hand them over. After the ambassador left, Rebecca and her team stood in silence, watching the cubs play. The responsibility they had taken on was enormous. 3 lives depended on their ability to prove that nurture could overcome nature. Inside the nursery, Scout looked up at the observation window and saw the humans watching. The little cub walked to the glass and placed one small hand against it. Its big eyes seemed to understand somehow that its future depended on the humans who had saved it. Rebecca placed her hand on the glass opposite Scout's. "We will not let anything happen to you," she whispered. "I promise." The cub made a soft sound that almost sounded like it was trying to say "thank you" in English. Behind Scout, Brave and Swift came to the window too, pressing their small faces against the glass. 3 pairs of intelligent eyes looked up at the humans with complete trust. Rebecca knew that in 6 months, they would either prove that love could transform even the most feared predators in the galaxy, or watch 3 innocent children pay the price for their species' reputation. The race against time had begun. Admiral Sarah Hayes stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the holographic display showing dozens of alien ships gathered at the edge of human space. The Galactic Council had sent representatives from 6 different species, all demanding that humanity surrender the 3 Corvan cubs. "How many ships are we looking at?" she asked Commander Robert Lee, her intelligence officer. 42 vessels total, Robert replied, checking his reports. The Vethrons brought a full battle fleet. They are not taking any chances. Sarah rubbed her temples. As the head of Human Space Command, she had dealt with many diplomatic crises, but nothing like this. 3 small alien children had somehow become the center of an interstellar incident. "Any word from Earth?" she asked. "President Williams supports our position, but Congress is divided. The economic pressure is getting worse every day. 3 more trade routes were cut off this morning." In the medical bay, Dr. Jennifer Adams was conducting her daily evaluation of the cubs. As the station's chief psychologist, she had been assigned to determine whether the cubs posed any psychological threat to humanity. Scout sat across from her at a small table, working on a puzzle designed for human children. The cub's small claws moved carefully as it fitted the pieces together. Its concentration was complete, tongue sticking out slightly as it focused. "Very good, Scout," Dr. Adams said when the puzzle was finished. "You are getting faster each time." Scout looked up at her and made a sound that was clearly an attempt at human speech. "Thank you, Jenny," Dr. Adams smiled. The cubs had started using simplified versions of human names 3 weeks ago. Scout called her Jenny, while Brave referred to Dr. Park as Dave. Swift had taken to calling Admiral Morrison Jake, much to everyone's amusement. "Scout, I want to show you some pictures," Dr. Adams said, pulling out a series of images on her tablet. "Can you tell me what you see?" The first image showed 2 human children playing together. Scout looked at it carefully. "Friends playing," Scout said in his halting English. "Happy." "That is right." "What about this one?" The next image showed one child helping another who had fallen down. Scout studied it for a moment. "Help friend," Make better. Good. Dr. Adams nodded and moved to the next picture. This one showed two children fighting over a toy. Scout's expression changed, his large eyes showing distress. Bad. Hurt friend. No good. Scout shook his head firmly. What should they do instead? Dr. Adams asked. Scout thought for a moment, his young mind working through the concepts he had. Learned. Share toy. Take turns. Both happy. Dr. Adams made notes on her tablet. In 3 months of testing, none of the cubs had ever suggested violence as a solution to any problem. Their responses consistently showed empathy, cooperation, and concern for others. A soft chime indicated that visiting hours were starting. Scout immediately perked up and looked toward the door. Right on schedule, engineer Lisa Chen entered the room carrying a bag of building materials. Hello, Scout, Lisa said with a smile. Ready for today's lesson? Scout made an excited chittering sound and ran to her. Lisa had been teaching the cubs basic engineering principles using simple construction, toys. Scout had shown remarkable aptitude for understanding how things worked. In the next room, Brave was having his session with Marine Sergeant Tom Bradley. The largest of the 3 cubs was learning about teamwork through simple games. Tom had been skeptical at first, but Brave's natural leadership abilities and protective instincts had won him over. Okay, Brave, Tom said, setting up an obstacle course. Swift is stuck on the other side. How do we help him get across? Brave studied the setup carefully. There were blocks to climb over, gaps to cross, and barriers to go around. The cub walked the course once, then went back to where Swift was waiting. Instead of just showing Swift the way, Brave took his smaller brother's hand and guided him through each obstacle. When Swift stumbled, Brave steadied him. When the gap was too wide, Brave helped Swift jump across. Good job, Tom said when they finished. You took care of your brother. Brave looked up at Tom with bright eyes. Family help family, he said proudly. Tom felt a tightness in his chest. These cubs understood loyalty and family better than many humans he had known. Meanwhile, Commander Robert Lee was in his office reviewing intelligence reports when something caught his attention. He had been investigating the attack on the Corvan, ship where the cubs were found, trying to piece together what had happened. Computer, show me the weapon signatures from the Corvan vessel, he said. The screen displayed energy patterns and blast marks. Robert compared them to his database of known alien weapons. After several minutes, he found a match. Veteran plasma cannons, he said to himself. But why would the Vethrans attack a Corvan ship and then demand custody of the survivors? He dug deeper into the intelligence files, looking for connections. What he found made his blood run cold. The Corvan ship had not been a military vessel at all. It had been a refugee transport, carrying families fleeing from a Vethran attack on their home world. The cubs were not the children of warriors. They were refugees, survivors of what appeared to be a systematic extermination campaign. Robert immediately called Admiral Hayes. Ma'am, I need to see you right away. I have found something about the cubs that changes everything. In the medical bay, Dr. Adams was finishing her evaluation report when she heard shouting in the corridor. She looked out to see several security guards running toward the docking bay. What is happening? She asked one of them. Vethran boarding party, the guard replied without stopping. They are demanding to inspect the cubs. Dr. Adams felt a chill of fear. She ran back to the nursery where all 3 cubs were now gathered for their afternoon meal. They looked up at her with trust in their large eyes, completely unaware of the danger approaching. Scout tilted his head, sensing her distress. Jenny okay? He asked in his careful English. Yes, Scout, she said, trying to keep her voice calm. Everything is fine. But as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, Dr. Adams knew that their peaceful world was about to be shattered. The Vethrans were coming, and they would not be satisfied with just an inspection. She activated her communicator. Security to Medical Bay immediately. Code yellow. The cubs continued eating. making soft, happy sounds as they shared their food with each other. They had learned so much about being human, but now Dr. Adams wondered if it would be enough to save their lives. Through the viewport, she could see the dark shape of a Vethran warship docked to their station. Whatever happened next would determine not just the fate of 3 innocent children, but the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. The Cubs had shown that love could overcome fear, that nurture could triumph over nature. Now it was time to see if the galaxy was ready to learn the same lesson. Outside, Admiral Hayes was preparing to meet with the Vethran commander. In her hand, she carried Commander Lee's intelligence report. The truth about what had really happened to the Cubs family was about to come to light. And somewhere in the depths of space, more Corvin ships were moving toward human territory, drawn by rumors that their lost children might still be alive. 6 months had passed since the Vethran inspection team had left Luna Station empty-handed. Admiral Hayes had used Commander Lee's evidence to expose the truth about the Cubs' refugee status, forcing the Vethrans to retreat temporarily. But everyone knew they would be back. The Cubs had grown dramatically during this time. Scout now stood nearly 4 feet tall. His gray scales had darkened to a rich blue-green color, and his movements were more coordinated. Brave had grown even larger, his protective instincts stronger than ever. Swift remained the smallest, but was now the fastest learner of the 3. Dr. Rebecca Walsh watched through the observation window as teacher Nancy Wilson conducted the morning lesson. Nancy was a kind woman with silver hair who had volunteered to educate the Cubs when it became clear they needed formal schooling. "Now, who can tell me what 7 plus 5 equals?" Nancy asked, writing the problem on the whiteboard. All 3. Cubs raised their hands eagerly. Scout's hand shot up first. 12, Scout said clearly, his English now nearly perfect. "Very good, Scout." "Brave, can you show us how you got that answer?" Brave stood up and walked to a box of counting blocks. He carefully arranged 7 blocks in one group and 5 in another, then pushed them together and counted the total. 7 blocks plus 5 blocks makes 12 blocks, Brave explained. Nancy smiled. "Excellent. Swift, can you think of another way to solve this problem?" Swift, who had been quietly thinking, stood up and drew on the whiteboard. He made 7 small marks, then added 5 more, then counted them all. "Same answer, different way," Swift said proudly. In the back of the room, engineer Kevin Thompson watched with amazement. He had been teaching the Cubs about technology and engineering for the past month. Their ability to understand complex concepts was beyond anything he had expected. "Nancy, when you are finished with math, could I show them the new project?" Kevin asked. "Of course." "Cubs, Mr. Kevin has something special for you today." The Cubs gathered around Kevin as he pulled out a box of electronic components. Inside were simple circuits, wires, batteries, and small lights. "Today we are going to build something that can help people," Kevin said. "Who remembers what we learned about electricity last week?" Scout raised his hand. "Electricity flows through wires like water through pipes. If we connect it right, we can make lights work." "Perfect. Now, I want each of you to build a flashlight that could help someone in the dark." The Cubs set to work with intense concentration. Their small claws, which had once seemed so dangerous, proved to be perfect for delicate electronic work. Within an hour, all 3 had constructed working flashlights, but Swift had done something extra. He had added a second light that flashed, in a pattern. "What is that for?" Kevin asked. "Signal light," Swift explained. "If someone is lost, they can use this to call for help. Flash pattern means, 'I need help' in the code you taught us." Kevin stared at the young cub in amazement. Swift had taken a basic lesson and expanded it into a rescue device. This level of creative thinking was remarkable for any child, let alone an alien one. Later that day, Admiral Jake Morrison visited the Cubs during their free time. He found them in the recreation room, playing a game they had invented themselves. It involved teamwork, strategy, and helping each other reach common goals. "Hello, Jake?" Scout said, using the informal name he had given the Admiral. "Want to play our game?" "I would love to," Jake replied, sitting down on the floor with them. The game was more complex than Jake had expected. Each player had to collect different colored tokens while helping the others collect theirs. No one could win unless everyone won together. "Who taught you this game?" Jake asked. "We made it," Brave said. "Games where someone loses are not fun. Better when everyone is happy." Jake felt a warmth in his chest. These cubs had naturally developed the concept of cooperative play without any human guidance. They instinctively understood that helping others made everyone stronger. As they played, Jake noticed how the cubs interacted with each other. Scout was the leader, always encouraging the others and making sure everyone understood the rules. Brave was the protector, constantly checking to make sure his brothers were safe and happy. Swift was the innovator, always thinking of new ways to solve problems. "Jake," Scout said during a quiet moment in the game, "why do some people want to hurt us?" The question caught Jake off guard. The Cubs had been asking more complex questions lately as their understanding of the galaxy grew. "Some people are afraid of things they do not understand," Jake said carefully. "Your species has a reputation for being dangerous, but you three are proving that reputation wrong." "We would never hurt anyone," Brave said firmly. "Hurting people is wrong." "Where did you learn that?" Jake asked. Swift looked up at him with large, innocent eyes. "You taught us, all of you. Every day you show us how to be kind, how to help others, how to make friends instead of enemies." Jake felt a lump in his throat. These cubs had absorbed the best of human values and made them their own. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the communications center. Admiral Sarah Hayes appeared on the wall screen, her expression serious. "Jake, we have a situation developing. Long-range sensors have detected a large fleet approaching our space. The ships are Corvin." Jake stood up quickly. "How many ships?" "Over 100. They will be here in 2 days. And Jake, they are broadcasting a message on all frequencies. They want their cubs back." The cubs looked at each other with worry in their eyes. They understood enough to know that their birth parents' people were coming for them. "Will you send us away?" Scout asked quietly. Jake knelt down beside the 3 cubs who had become like children to him. "No one is going to take you away from your family, and that is what we are now, your family." But even as he said the words, Jake wondered if he could keep that promise. 100 Corvin warships was more firepower than humanity had ever faced. The cubs had shown that their species could be gentle and kind when raised with love. But what would happen when they met the warriors they were supposed to become? In 2 days, they would find out if the bonds they had built were strong enough to survive the greatest test of all. The massive Corvin fleet hung in space like a dark cloud of death. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the formation of over 100 alien warships. Each vessel was twice the size of his largest battleship, bristling with weapons that could tear through human shields like paper. "They are requesting permission to send a delegation aboard," Communications Officer Lisa Chen reported. "The message is in perfect English." Jake nodded grimly. "Tell them they can send 1 ship with no more than 5 representatives. Full diplomatic protocols apply." "Sir," Colonel Mike Turner said from his security station, "I recommend we move the cubs to a secure location before the Corvin arrive." "No," Jake replied firmly. "If we hide them, it will look like we have something to be ashamed of. The cubs have done nothing wrong." In the medical bay, Dr. Jennifer Adams was having an emergency session with Scout, Brave, and Swift. The cubs had been told about the approaching fleet, and their reactions had been mixed. Scout seemed excited about meeting others of his kind. Brave was worried about protecting his human family. Swift was asking technical questions about the ships and their capabilities. "How do you feel about seeing other Corvin?" Dr. Adams asked. "Scared," Scout admitted, "but also curious. Will they be like us?" "What if they are not like us?" Brave asked. "What if they want to make us different?" Swift was quiet for a moment before speaking. We are who we are because of the love you gave us. Nothing can change that now. Dr. Adams felt proud of how mature the cubs had become. In less than a year, they had developed wisdom that many adults never achieved. Dr. Adams, Scout said softly, if we have to go with them, will you remember us? You are not going anywhere, she replied firmly. But yes, we will always remember you. You three have changed all of us for the better. The Corvin shuttle docked with Luna Station 2 hours later. Admiral Hayes, Ambassador Rodriguez, and a full security detail were waiting in the docking bay. Jake had insisted on being present despite the risk. The airlock opened and 5 figures emerged. Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. The adult Corvan were even more intimidating in person than the corpses they had found on the derelict ship. Each one stood nearly 9 feet tall, their dark scales gleaming like armor. Their claws clicked against the metal floor as they walked. The leader stepped forward. His voice was deep and harsh when he spoke. I am War Commander Throat Ripper of the Corvin High Fleet. You will return our young to us immediately. Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward. Welcome to Luna Station, War Commander. I am Ambassador Elena Rodriguez, representing Earth's government. We would like to discuss the situation regarding the 3 young Corvin in our care. There is nothing to discuss, Throat Ripper growled. They belong with their own kind. You have corrupted them with your weak human ways. With respect, Admiral Hayes interrupted. The cubs were rescued from a destroyed refugee ship. They were dying when we found them. We saved their lives. Better they had died as true Corvin than live as tainted creatures, another Corvin warrior said. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. Those children are not tainted. They are intelligent, kind, and more civilized than most adults I know. Throat Ripper turned his attention to Jake. His predator eyes seemed to look right through him. You are the one who leads this station. Show me these cubs you claim to have saved. I will do better than that, Jake said. I will let you speak with them yourself. 20 minutes later, the Corvin delegation stood outside the nursery observation window. Inside, the 3 cubs were having their afternoon lesson with Nancy Wilson. They were working together to solve a complex puzzle that required cooperation and communication. Throat Ripper stared at the cubs with an expression that was hard to read. They are small, he said finally. They are still growing, Dr. Walsh explained, but their minds are fully developed. Would you like to meet them? Yes. The cubs looked up nervously as the delegation entered their room. Scout, being the bravest, stepped forward first. Hello, Scout said in careful English. I am Scout. These are my brothers, Brave and Swift. Throat Ripper studied the small cub for a long moment. Then he spoke in the harsh, clicking language of the Corvin. Scout tilted his head, listening carefully. After a moment, he responded in the same language, though his voice was much softer. The conversation continued for several minutes. Jake watched. As the war commander's expression slowly changed from anger to confusion to something that might have been wonder. Finally, Scout switched back to English. War Commander Throat Ripper wants to know why we do not show proper respect to our enemies. What did you tell him? Jake asked. I told him we have no enemies here, Scout replied. Only friends and family. Throat Ripper spoke again in Corvin. This time, Brave answered, his voice strong and clear. He asked why we are not training for war, Brave translated. I told him we are training for peace. Swift, who had been quietly listening, suddenly stepped forward and began speaking rapidly in Corvin. His small hands moved as he explained something complex. What is Swift saying? Dr. Adams asked. Scout listened for a moment, then smiled. He is explaining the mathematics of cooperation, how working together makes everyone stronger than fighting, alone. One of the other Corvin warriors laughed harshly. Children's games. When they grow to full size, the killing instinct will take over. It always does. No, Brave said firmly, switching to English so the humans could understand. Killing is a choice. We choose differently. You cannot choose differently, the warrior replied. It is in your blood, in your bones. You are Corvin. Scout walked over to Jake and took his hand. Yes, we are Corvin, but we are also something new. We are Corvin who learned to love instead of hate. The room fell silent. Throat Ripper stared at the small cub holding the human's hand. In Corvin culture, physical contact was rare and usually meant dominance or submission. But this was something else entirely. You would choose these weak creatures over your own species, Throat Ripper asked. Swift stepped forward. We do not choose between them. We choose to bring them together. Before anyone could react, Swift began speaking in Corvin again. But this time, he was teaching basic English words to the war commander. Simple concepts like friend, help, and peace. To everyone's amazement, Throat Ripper began repeating the words, his harsh voice struggling with the unfamiliar sounds. Friend, the massive warrior said slowly. Help, peace. Scout clapped his small hands together. Very good. You are learning. For the first time since entering the station, Throat Ripper smiled. It was a terrifying expression on his predator face, but it was genuine. These cubs, he said to Jake, they are not what we expected. No, Jake agreed. They are something better than we ever dared to hope for. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent alarm. Lisa Chen's voice came over the communication system. All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The veterans are back, and they brought friends. Through the viewport, they could see dozens of new ships appearing in space. Not just veteran vessels, but ships from 6 different species. All of them armed and ready for war. Throat Ripper's expression hardened. The veterans seek to finish what they started when they destroyed the refugee ships. Then we fight together, Jake said simply. The war commander looked at him with surprise. You would risk your lives for 3 Corvin cubs, Scout answered before Jake could speak. They are not risking their lives for 3 Corvin cubs. They are risking their lives for family. In that moment, everything changed. The cubs had shown their birth species something that had been thought impossible. They had proven that Corvin could choose love over war, cooperation over conquest. The battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The space around Luna Station erupted into chaos as the veteran fleet opened fire without warning. Energy beams lanced through the darkness, striking both human and Corvin ships. The alliance of 6 species had come to eliminate what they called the Corvin threat once and for all. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on his bridge watching the battle unfold. To his surprise, the Corvin fleet had immediately moved to protect the human station instead of attacking it. War Commander Throat Ripper is requesting permission to coordinate our defense, Communications Officer Lisa Chen reported. Granted, Jake replied. Patch him through to all our ships. The War Commander's harsh voice filled the communication. Channels. Human vessels, form defensive positions around your station. Corvin fleet will engage the main enemy force. We fight together today. On Luna Station, the 3 cubs watched the battle through the observation windows of their room. Their young minds were processing something that no Corvin had ever experienced before, seeing their own people fight alongside those they had been taught to consider prey. I want to help, Scout said, his hands pressed against the glass. Doctor. Jennifer Adams knelt beside him. You are too young to fight, Scout. Not fight, Swift said, looking up at her with determined eyes. Help differently. Brave nodded in agreement. We can talk to both sides, help them work together better. Dr. Adams realized what the cubs were suggesting. They wanted to serve as communication bridges between the human and Corvin forces. Jake, she said into her communicator, the cubs want to help coordinate the battle. They can translate and relay information faster than our computers. Jake's response was immediate. "Bring them to the command center." Minutes later, the three cubs stood on the bridge of the command station, small communication devices attached to their collars. Their young voices carried across space, translating battle plans and coordinating attacks between species who had never worked together before. Scout spoke rapidly in Corvan, directing War Commander Throatripper's ships to vulnerable points in the enemy formation. Brave, coordinated rescue operations, making sure that both human and Corvan wounded were evacuated safely. Swift analyzed the enemy weapon patterns and shared the information with both fleets. The Cubs were doing more than just translating. They were thinking strategically, combining human tactical flexibility with Corvan warrior instincts. "Enemy formation breaking apart," Brave reported. "3 veteran ships retreating to coordinates Swift is sending you now." Jake watched in amazement as the combined fleet, guided by 3 young cubs, began to push back the superior enemy force. But the tide of battle truly turned when something unexpected happened. A group of Corvan warriors, inspired by seeing their people fighting alongside humans, began using human-style rescue tactics instead of just focusing on destruction. War Commander Throatripper himself saved a damaged human ship by positioning his vessel as a shield while the crew evacuated. "Why are you helping us?" the human captain asked over the radio. "Because the Cubs taught me something," Throatripper replied. "There is strength in protecting others, not just destroying enemies." The final phase of the battle began when the enemy realized they were losing. The veteran commander activated a massive weapon that would destroy everything in the area, including his own ships. "All vessels retreat immediately," the enemy broadcast. "The fusion bomb will detonate in 5 minutes." Jake felt despair wash over him. There was no way to evacuate everyone in time. Thousands of beings, both human and Corvan, would die. But Scout had been listening to the enemy communications. His young mind, trained by months of human education, saw a solution that the adults had missed. "Swift," Scout said urgently. "Remember the engineering lessons with Kevin? The electromagnetic pulse we learned about?" Swift's eyes widened with understanding. "If we can create a big enough pulse, it might disrupt the bomb's timing mechanism." Brave looked at his brothers. "How do we make a pulse that big?" "All the ships," Scout said excitedly. "If every ship fires their energy weapons at the same time into empty space, the combined electromagnetic discharge might work." Scout activated his communicator and began speaking rapidly in both English and Corvan, explaining the plan to both fleets. "This is Scout," he said, his young voice carrying across space. "All ships must fire their main weapons at these coordinates at exactly the same time. Swift will count down." Jake stared at the small cub. "Scout, are you sure this will work?" "No," Scout admitted. "But we have to try. Family protects family." War Commander Throatripper's voice came over the radio. "The young one speaks wisdom. All Corvan ships will follow the Cubs' plan." "Human fleet, acknowledging," Jake added. "All ships prepare to fire on Swift's mark." Swift stood at the center of the command deck, his small form surrounded by the chaos of battle. He watched the sensor readings carefully, calculating the exact moment when the combined blast would have the greatest effect. 10, Swift began counting. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire. Over 200 ships fired their weapons simultaneously into the exact same point in space. The combined energy discharge created an electromagnetic pulse, unlike anything ever seen before. The pulse raced across space and struck the veteran fusion bomb just as it began its final countdown. The weapon's delicate timing mechanisms were scrambled, and instead of a massive explosion, it simply powered down harmlessly. The silence that followed was broken by cheers from both human and Corvan ships. "The Cubs did it," someone shouted over the radio. "They saved us all." War Commander Throatripper's voice was filled with something that sounded like pride. These young ones have shown us a new way to use our strength, not for destruction, but for protection. 5 years later, Captain Jake Morrison, now an old man with gray hair, stood on the observation deck of New Harmony, the first joint human Corvan colony. Below him, children of both species played together in the gardens that surrounded the settlement. Scout, now fully grown but still gentle, was teaching a group of mixed human and Corvan children about mathematics. His patient voice carried up to where Jake stood. Brave had become the colony's chief of security, but his job was more about solving problems than fighting enemies. He spent his days mediating disputes and organizing community events. Swift worked as the colony's chief engineer, designing new technologies that combined human innovation with Corvan strength. His latest project was a communication system that would allow peaceful contact with other species across the galaxy. "Uncle Jake," a small voice called out. Jake looked down to see Scout's youngest cub, a tiny female with bright green scales and curious eyes. She was one of the new generation raised from birth with both human and Corvan values. "Yes, Hope," Jake said, kneeling down to her level. "Daddy says you were there when he was little like me. Is that true?" Jake smiled, remembering the day they had found 3 terrified cubs on a dead ship. "Yes, I was there. Your father and uncles taught us all something very important." "What did they teach you?" Jake looked out at the thriving colony, where former enemies now lived as family. "They taught us that love is stronger than fear, and that anyone can choose to be better than what others expect them to be." Hope nodded, seriously, then ran back to join the other children in their games. Jake watched her go, marveling at how one small act of compassion had changed the entire galaxy. 3 orphaned cubs had grown up to become teachers, protectors, and innovators, but more importantly, they had proven that nurture could indeed overcome nature. The cubs had shown the galaxy that there was always a choice between hatred and love, between destruction and creation, between war and peace. And in choosing love, they had given everyone a new path to follow toward a better future. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that, Jake thought as he watched the children play, was exactly as it should be. In the distance, Scout was finishing his lesson by telling the children about the importance of helping others. "Remember," Scout said in his gentle voice, "we are all family under the stars, and family takes care of family." The children, both human and Corvan, nodded seriously before running off to play together. They carried with them the seeds of a new understanding that would spread throughout the galaxy for generations to come. The Predator's cubs had indeed defied every expectation. They had become something greater than anyone had dared to hope. They had become teachers of peace in a galaxy that had forgotten how to love.